Hi everyone, we're about to get started, but before we do, can you just let us know in the chat box below that you can hear us okay, please?
Is anyone typing? Oh, someone
Cool.
is. Andy's there. Brilliant, Andy.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Alan.
Brilliant. Well, before we get started, let's introduce ourselves. My name's Nick Craggs, I'm AAT Distance Learning Director.
I'm Ben. I'm a director and centre manager for First Intuition in Cambridge, but I also am a tutor teaching across the AAT syllabuses.
And Crystal, who you can't see or hear, is with us on the chat box to answer any questions, and she's director of AAT, and she knows everything about everything AAT related. So the purpose of tonight is to make sure no one ends up in trouble in regards to moving over to AQ 2013 to AQ 2016, and everyone knows what their options are.
Excellent. Right, let's move through the slides.
So, moving on. Right, most important thing, December 2017 is when AQ 2013 ends, and you really must have AQ 2013 done by that point. At that point, you will not be able to sit any more AQ 2013 exams at all.
Just a word of warning on that. As a centre manager, from a very practical point of view, I know our centre gets incredibly busy in the last couple of weeks in December. We do shut down for Christmas, as many other centres do, so a big kind of plan to get slots booked into exam centre diaries sooner rather than later. Basically, when it comes to the first week in December, you will have a big problem booking exam slots, I would imagine, unless you're willing to travel the length and breadth of the country.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally that is a really, really busy time for exams anyway, because people just want to get their last unit done so they can take some time off over Christmas. But with this deadline coming, it's going to be so busy. So if you do want to get your 2013 qualification done, you really need to be getting that exam booked sooner rather than later.
Okay, moving on to what you need to consider. With regards to your training provider, are they going to support you to complete 2013? And most importantly, are they going to assess your systems and controls ISIS project? First Intuition will do, and Nick and his team are fully ready to go with that from a distance learning perspective. If you want to contact your local FI centre as well, they will have on the ground local tutors willing to support you.
Yeah, if you're not with First Intuition and you have yet to book your ISIS project with a provider, say you were self-studying, you need to do it sooner rather than later. And traditionally, we would set you up with 6 months to do your ISIS project. So as a training provider, we feel we wouldn't be being fair by you if we took your money in, say, November, because the odds are you're not going to complete. So we're no longer taking bookings for ISIS at the end of this month. So if you do want to complete and you've still got ISIS to book, you really need to book it soon, because it's not something you can do very quickly.
We'll talk a bit more in a moment about individual units, but I think the big message from us at the moment would be realistic with your plans. If you've got multiple units to finish off under the old AQ 2013 syllabus, I think you really need to be taking a very practical view on which ones realistically you can get done before the end of the year and which ones you can't, and then seek advice, and hopefully some of the stuff we're going to talk about this evening will help guide you in which ones maybe you would prioritise this side of Christmas, and some that you maybe will leave to transition over to the new syllabus.
Yes, I mean, we've been mentioned about transitioning from 2013 to 2016, but there are people out there who have got some units on 2010 or even AQ 2003. They will not at all carry over. So if you've got any units like that, you will definitely lose them. So you need to bear that in mind when you discuss this with a tutor or training provider, because you need to make it clear that they know that although you might have a credit in accounts preparation, that won't carry over to advanced bookkeeping like a 2013 unit would. Moving on, we mentioned there that some units do not transfer from AQ 2013 to 2016. Most do, but we're going to cover the 2013 units which don't transfer over. So we're going to come to that later. But one thing to bear in mind is that's really great. We're going to cover this AQ 2016, but you get grading now, because before it was competent or not yet competent, and if you got 100%, you got competent. If you scraped 70%, you got competent. Now you get grading. However, any units you transfer over, say accounts preparation to advanced bookkeeping, when you are on AQ 2016 and you're going for your distinction, you will only get 70% for your pass rate, even though you maybe got 100% in accounts preparation. So just bear that in mind. If you were looking for a distinction on AQ 2016, all your 2013 units that you transfer over will only be 70%.
Just while Nick's moving on the slides, you've got the ability to ask questions. As we said earlier, Crystal is not with us here, but she's logged on remotely, so she can be kind of typing away, answering any questions. At the end, obviously, there'll be chance for some more formal questions as well. So I think the first thing you need to be asking yourselves as an existing student, in your current level, which units have you so far passed, and therefore which units have you got left to pass to then kind of plan your route through. Some units don't transfer over, which Nick spoke about a moment ago. If you're on AQ 2013, if you're a level 2 student, if you've done working effectively, what we call WEAF, there is no equivalent of that under the new syllabus, and if you've passed it already, unless you complete the whole of the rest of the level 2 unit under the old syllabus before the end of the year, that one will not transfer over. At level 3, there's 2 units, the spreadsheets unit and the ethics unit. If you've passed both of those under 2013, but you fail to complete the rest of the qualification at that level, those 2 will not transfer over, and you will have to do the new synoptic. And likewise at level 4, if you've done your internal controls ISIS project, but you fail to complete the rest of level 4 before the end of the year, that won't transfer over, and you will have to do the new synoptic, which covers those elements again.
Yeah, and there's just one point I want to sort of clarify. We're wanting you to complete the level, not AAT. So if you did level 2 on AQ 2010 even, and you've only got 1 unit left on AQ 2013 level 3, if you complete level 3, it doesn't matter about level 2, that is in the bank. It's only the level you've got to complete. Any other exams you passed at a lower level, as long as you've completed that level, will be kept.
As tutors, we've obviously been in a bit of a transition period advising people on AQ 2016 new versus AQ 2013 and older old. That's thrown up a few areas that are significantly different in some tasks between the old and the new syllabus. Maybe going into a bit of technical detail here, but at level 2, early settlement prompt payment discounts, the assessment and the rules for that around when you account for the VAT are now different. And so that could catch you out if you transition over but have units left. There are some new rules you'll need to learn there. The spreadsheets tasks now within the level 3 synoptic, there's no separate spreadsheets exam, but half of the synoptic at level 3 under AQ 2016 will test your knowledge of spreadsheets. That's at a much higher level. We're having feedback from students that it's far more complex than it was under the old rules and the old syllabus. And finally, within level 4, certainly within financial performance, the new decision and control unit, there are significant differences and a bit of budgeting as well. Financial statements, actually, there's slightly less to learn by the accounting standards, but there are some differences. So you need to ask yourself there, even if you're going to transition over, will your old syllabus study material actually give you the skills and knowledge you need? As well as the syllabus, there are differences within the assessments. The tasks are in slightly different orders and slightly different formats. And so you might have to consider investing in some new study material if you've got any units to study under AQ 2016 in the new year.
That's right. I mean, for example, accounts preparation, the material we teach you is pretty much exactly the same. Accruals and prepayments have been the same for hundreds of years. But the exam is very different in terms of layout, but not in content. So there's only 5 tasks in advanced bookkeeping, but there's 6 tasks in accounts preparation. So it might be worth investing in maybe just some extra material in terms of mocks. You've got the AAT mocks when you transfer over, but for example, you could not do the synoptic material if you had AQ 2013 spreadsheets and ethics material. It's not an option. So you just need to bear in mind what material you've got and what material you will probably need to buy if you do transition over. So what's changed for AQ 2016? Other than the fact that some units are a little bit harder, the good thing about AQ 2016, you've now got a graded assessment. So before, as I mentioned, it was competent or not yet competent. You've now got pass, merit and distinction. And this allows you to sort of excel over and above sort of other people. And you can go to a potential employer and go, look at me, I got a distinction. And that grade is for the level, not individual units, but individual units go towards the overall grade. And there is some weighting in the unit. So if you've got 6 units at level sorry, advanced level, we should say, the vast majority or the large portion of the marks do come from the synoptic exam, whereas the indirect tax units makes up very less marks towards the overall grade.
I'm just adding a bit of depth there. Once you come out of the assessment for the new AQ 2016, as well as being told you're competent or not competent, to go towards that grading, you get a score, which I know as a tutor is actually very beneficial for students, and we don't like to have students fail, and hopefully we don't have many students fail, but if you do fail, I think you get a bit more perspective with regards to that score as to whether it was a borderline very close fail or whether there was some significant gaps in your knowledge and your performance on the day. So a percentage score, I think, is a good improvement for the new syllabus.
Yeah, I mean, on AQ 2013, the pass mark was done on a percentage, but you just never got to find out. And it used to wind students up. Whereas now it does allow you to sort of differentiate yourself and say, I got a distinction. It is something that I think is a great addition to AQ 2016. And as an aside, because you've got this distinction at the advanced level, it actually counts towards UCAS points and equivalent to A levels as well, so which was never a possibility before.
I think that the biggest difference is point 2 on the slide there, the synoptic assessments now. So under AQ 2016, at the end of every level, there is a synoptic, a funny word. I think about it more as a kind of combined skills test. It retests knowledge that you have gained in the prior units, but it does it in a more joined up way, in a very practical, business orientated way. Most people obviously have not done their synoptics under the new syllabus until they have completed all of the prior units. So we are now seeing lots of students who started their level studies back in September taking synoptics. We're getting lots of feedback from students, both first intuition students and students that study elsewhere, that these assessments are very challenging. They test stuff in a lot more detail than previous units have tested, and they require you to really understand and be able to explain the theory as opposed to just crunch the numbers. So for the synoptic, I think that the days of staying up all night the night before the exam just to learn how to answer the tasks are gone. If you don't really understand how to apply it, you're going to struggle.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of it's not meant to be, indirect tax. It's meant to be, can you apply it to the workplace? And what it does, it brings everything together just like it would in a real world scenario. So instead of, I'll learn everything about accounts preparation and then I'll forget it, move on to indirect tax, forget that because it never comes up at level 4. It brings it all together, and potentially what will happen is you'll get a scenario where someone's made an error on a VAT return and you've got to use your indirect tax knowledge to know can they correct it on the next VAT return, and then it potentially might ask you for the journal to correct the error, which brings in your knowledge from advanced bookkeeping. And then if the client refuses to correct the error, it will then ask you to explain what the ethical implications are of the client not correcting the error. So it brings in indirect tax, advanced bookkeeping and ethics in a real world scenario. And as it says there's a lot more written elements. I mean, traditionally, people always used to find level 4 difficult, and it used to be a big jump up. And the big reason was with these written questions that no one likes. Everyone likes to be an accountant, pushing numbers in a calculator. But at level 4, it's not just a case of can you do it, it's more of a case of can you explain why we're doing it, what we're trying to achieve, and it's more can you convey accounting information rather than just calculate it. So it does prepare you a lot more for these written questions, and it just makes it easier rather than going through numerical task at level 2, numerical task at level 3, and then suddenly you've got to explain stuff to clients at level 4. So it does prepare them better for the advanced professional level, I should say.
I think just pulling practically on that then, if you get to the end of the year and you haven't completed your level, you'll have to sit the synoptic under the new syllabus. I would say certainly for the synoptic, I would feel you would need some additional study material, certainly along the lines of mocks, tasks that are written in a completely different format from what you will have had and will have seen for the core units, and you might have passed those and they will have transferred over with competency. But the synoptic, certainly to go out and buy some material with a new task bank, very much testing these new skills that you will need to achieve success.
That's right, because in costs and revenues, we've taught you how to flex a budget, but one of the questions that may come up is, can you explain to a person who's not an accountant as to why we flex a budget? So it's also conveying accounting terms to non-accounting people. our cost and revenues material doesn't get you to do that. It will just teach you how to flex the budget.
Cool. At that stage, any questions from anyone at home? Anyone have any burning questions around synoptic assessment or how the exams might differ? Oh, someone's typing. Hello, Alan.
The other thing I should say is the synoptics exams are not available all the time, unlike the other AQ 2013 exams. So you've got to be aware of which synoptic window you're going to hit. So for example, the foundation one is available more often than not, 3 weeks out of 4 it's available, whereas the advanced and professional is 1 week in 6. And they're also quite busy that time, so you might want to book your exam in advance.
Does FI provide synoptic training material? Yes, we do, Alan. We spent a lot of time previous to September rolling out our new syllabus material, and if you're in the position that you do transfer over and you need to sit a synoptic, you can just book the synoptic course as a distance learning course to get the material, to get the online lectures and the mock assessments that I think you will need to prepare for that exam.
Yeah, I mean, we even just sell the self-study option. So if you had AQ 2013 materials from another provider and you just wanted to brush up on the synoptic type questions, we do provide that. And without this being a sales plug, we do produce our own material in-house. And to be fair, the synoptic exams have not gone as AAT would have liked. It is an understatement. And so we've been continually changing them and tweaking them, making them harder, really, because we want to reflect the feedback that we're getting from students all the time. That these are not exams to be taken lightly. That's not to say people aren't passing them, to be honest. If it was me personally, I'd rather do a three-hour exam at the fresh level than a 5,000 word project, because it would just hang over me. Whereas synoptic, you go in, you do the exam, and it's over and done with.
Benefits of each qualification. I'll go. So 2013, I presume everyone that's watching is on the 13 syllabus. I know Nick said you could have been on older syllabuses. Still plenty of resources available. We have got courses. We are still selling the courses for 2013. So if you've got units left and you haven't got material from your current provider, or you want some additional material to make sure you do get it passed under AQ 2013, as Nick said, we don't just sell the online courses and the online levels. We sell individual units, and we sell just the study material, like a printed book for each of those units. Stay with what you know. I think there is some mileage in that. You've done hopefully some units through AQ 2013, and I would still advocate trying as much as possible to complete as many of those units this side of the new year as possible. Certainly some units, I would say, are probably, I don't like using the word easier to students. No exam is easy, but maybe some of the units are more straightforwardly tested at AQ 2013. Any level 4 students, I'm thinking specifically about the new paper they call Management, Accounting, Decision and Control. Previously that was called Financial Performance, and feedback from students that I've had in classrooms is the financial performance assessment was slightly more friendly to a student. Shall I put it that way, Nick?
It's easier. Yeah, there's been real problems with decision control. So if you were thinking of going from level 4 2013 to AQ 2016, if you could pass financial performance on AQ 2013 before you consider moving over, it's a lot more straightforward. AAT have been examining it for years. We've been teaching it for years. If you're well prepared for that exam, you will pass it. It is testing, but it is fair. Decision control has had teething issues, shall we say.
Obviously, no synoptics under the old syllabus. That has got to be an advantage if you're mid-level, because the problem is if you transition over and do the synoptic, you are going to be retested on things that you have in theory already passed an exam on. So you'll need to dig out the old books to do a bit of recap revision there, which no one really wants to do unless they really have to. And finally, as Nick alluded to earlier, the synoptic, the biggest problem for the synoptic exams is they can only be sat within the AAT scheduled windows. That needs a bit of forward planning for students. You can't just kind of do your study and then say, right, I think I'm ready to sit it next Thursday, only to find out that the next synoptic window is not for another 5 weeks, and therefore you're in a bit of limbo what you do for those 5 weeks because you were ready and at peak performance for the exam in 2 weeks' time. No restrictions there for AQ 2013, other than, again, just to emphasise my word of warning, although the AAT will let assessment centres schedule the AQ 2013 exams, if they have got a limited number of capacity seats for exams, we are expecting from now till the end of the year for them to be pretty busy. So get your assessments booked as soon as you can.
Yeah, just going back to the point Ben made about going back to your studies, if you do move over to AQ 2016 and you sit as an optic exam, you might find it's been a very long time since you sat some of the sort of earlier units. You practically would be learning them from scratch almost. So it might be worth bearing in mind, you know, ideally if you could finish on AQ 2013, it stops you having to go back to, say, final accounts for sole traders if you've not looked at partnership accounts for well over a year.
Let's talk about AQ 2016, because at the moment we've kind of been bigging up the old, and we're fully versed now with teaching the new. Certainly in the classes I've been teaching, we have had predominantly all students doing AQ 2016 since September. We are well into the swing of teaching it. I actually like the material and the syllabuses. Some big benefits. The grading, I think, is definitely a step in the right direction. Much more transparency now of whether you've just scraped through, whether you've just failed, or whether you've done really badly or excellently. And that, I think, is welcomed by most students. The qualification and the syllabuses were fully updated in September. That's a good thing. It means they are far more linked to the modern world. There are obviously core stuff. Budgeting hasn't changed too much from the previous syllabus. Some of the financial statement standards have been improved and tweaked a bit. And certainly if you're thinking about progressing on to further studies, I go on to teach students CIMA, ACCA, ICAW, and having learnt the new syllabus, they will be much better prepared for moving into those further qualifications that will then be teaching the new rules for those things.
Yeah, I mean, for a good example of that is personal tax. On AQ 2016, AT have added in inheritance tax, which not only does it come up in ACCA, but it's also like real world stuff. If you have an expensive house, you live down south, it will affect you. It's real world things. It's also brought in tax planning, which it never had before, which I think is a great addition as again. So they have looked at the qualifications, and when they do develop these qualifications, they do get employers in. I mean, we were part of the AQ 2016 consultation, and they do have employers, and they do ask them, what skills do you want from an accountant? They don't just make these things up. So it is a new qualification aimed at what the workplace nowadays is requiring from people.
A big advantage, I think, for the majority of the students I speak to at level 4 is they don't have to do the project. Initially, students kind of smile, like the idea of this coursework, that they're in a bit more control of when they submit, get feedback on and resubmit. But I know in the real world, other things take over. If you've got a real exam assessment booked a week on Monday, you are going to study that weekend because you know you've got to go and sit it a week on Monday. If it's coursework submission and you've got a provisional date to submit it a week on Monday, but you could submit it the following Monday, I know, and myself, I would be guilty of this. If a barbecue crops up that weekend, you're going to push it back, or if your friends are playing in a football match and you want to go and watch them, things take over.
Yeah, and the thing is, on the professional level, you sit in a synoptic exam, it's in the synoptic window. You can't even push the exam back like you can with 2013 exams. Unless you sit it out that date, you're going to be waiting another 6 weeks for a go at it. So you have no option. It focuses the mind.
The next point on the slide is slightly misleading. Yes, there is one less assessment to sit at level 3. There's certainly no less to learn across the whole level. Old syllabus rules said you do the professional ethics as a separate assessment to the spreadsheets, two completely separate things, no crossover, no retesting. Now you do the combined synoptic, which, as well as testing the previous 4 units, so the bookkeeping, the indirect tax, VAT stuff, and the management accounting costing, it will now include the spreadsheets and the ethics within one assessment. So not less learning, but one less exam to book and schedule into your diary.
That's right. And then another change is all assessments. So that's computerized accounts, ethics and spreadsheets that are now in Synoptic, and the ISIS is now in Synoptic. All that is marked by AAT now. So there's no projects that your training provider can mark and give you a provisional result within a day or so. You have to wait 6 weeks for your Synoptic results. And computerized accounts now as well, which is a standalone unit. It used to be marked as a standalone project. Again, that's marked by AAT, and you'll be waiting 6 weeks for your results for that. And there's nothing you can do about it, so you just get on with life. A question actually you get asked quite a lot is, while you're waiting for your Synoptic result, you can make a start on the next level.
Cool. Level 4 students, obviously you're still 6 weeks wait for results, whether you are old syllabus or new syllabus, so there's no change there. But it is something worth bearing in mind with regards to sitting your exams this side of the new year to finish off under 2013. Although you can sit your exams and they will obviously honour the kind of marking and the results of that after. If you're going to wait to find out you haven't been successful, you've got that 6 weeks wait. It's not like you can keep going every week until you've got these units passed. So that's again something else to bear in mind if we're factoring in potentially needing to resit an AQ 2013 exam this side of the new year.
That's right. So what should you do now? Now, first thing you think, the big question is, do you have time to complete on AQ 2013? If you haven't, you need to decide when's the best time for you to move over. You don't have to move over today, but you need to come to the exception that you will not complete on AQ 2013. You will have to move over to AQ 2016. And when's the best time for you? So, for example, on the AAT level 4, which is now a fresh level, it potentially would be a good idea to do budgeting, financial performance, financial statements on AQ 2013, then move over onto the AQ 2016 exam and test yourself on the Synoptic, because it will test you on all those 3 mandatory units, but not the optional units. It'd be far better to do that than do the 3 mandatory units, then your optional units, which are not part of Synoptic, and then do the Synoptic, because you have a longer wait between when you did the mandatory ones, which are tested, and when you do the Synoptic.
From my perspective, and I'm sure Nick will back me up, this is a very kind of personal, almost a one-to-one choice for students. We are having students contact us almost on a daily basis at the moment, who have all got slightly different combinations of what they've passed and what they've got left to do. At the end of the presentation, it's going to put up contact details for all 3 of us, myself, Nick and Crystal, and we would be more than happy for you to contact us where we can offer our own kind of advice on which units. My biggest piece of advice would be to focus. I think at this point there is a risk that you almost kind of try to do too much. I think you need to be realistic at what you can do and how much time you have got to commit to your studies this side of the new year. And I would say you're much better off to focus on 1 or 2 units to make sure they get passed, to make sure you've picked the ones that are the most beneficial for you then transitioning over, as Nick said. And that's really where we can come in. Drop us an email, get in touch with us, explain your circumstances, what you've got left, and we can work almost to put a detailed bespoke study plan together for you.
Yeah, and everyone's different, and you know how much free time you've got, how much time you've got to study. So if you don't get a lot of time at home to study, you've got to be realistic and think, I could potentially only do 1 exam between now and Christmas, but some people have more time. So as Ben said, it's a very personal decision.
Yeah, but don't be in the position that you pick ones that don't transfer over to sit first, because that's potentially just wasting your time. That not only will you have had to do the units that you're expecting to do, you'll have to redo some of the units that in theory you've already shown competency in. So please make those decisions with information from us or from somewhere else, but make an informed decision.
That's right. I mean, it's going to cost you money as well. If you have to pay to sit ethics and then you don't complete 2013 level 3, you're going to be paying for the Synoptic, and that money you've spent on getting to the exam, sitting the exam, it's just wasted. So you don't want to be in a situation where you're wasting your time and money on exams that will not carry over.
Okay, I think more about that in a moment with some kind of final thoughts. So level 2, guys, I think the key one is WIAF. There would be no advantage in sitting that exam if you don't expect to complete the rest of the level 2 before the new year, because even if you pass WIAF, if you haven't completed level 2, that one will not transition over and you will be tested on all that stuff again in the level 2 Synoptic.
That's right. So as it says here, if you've completed WIAF on level 2, you really want to do your best to complete under AQ 2013. If it's the only exam you have passed, you've got to be realistic. You're not going to pass the other 4, but there won't be many people in that situation. So if you've completed WEAF, you've got to try your best, at least, if possible, to complete.
Certainly, if you haven't completed WEAF, I would be suggesting leave that one until last. Try and get as many of the other ones done. If you do get a good run of the exams, in theory, if you complete them all, then do WEAF and complete the level before the end of the year. Brilliant. But if you don't, it will only be a case of coming back for either the units that you haven't done and the synoptic. So try and get as many of the other ones done as possible would be my advice.
Yeah. The only sort of caveat to that would be computerized accounting, because that's not in the synoptic. So if you had the 3 mandatory ones done and you're going to move over to AQ 2016, then you would do the WEAF, which brings in the knowledge from them, and then just leave computerized accounts till the end, because it's completely on its own, and you don't want it between you studying bookkeeping controls and when you're doing the synoptic.
Looking at level 3, if you're in the position that you have completed spreadsheets and/or ethics, in theory, it's in your best interest to try and finish off all of the other units under the old syllabus before the end of the year. It's the spreadsheets and the ethics that if you have passed those, but you haven't completed the whole of the rest of the level 3 under the old syllabus, you will have to redo all of the spreadsheets and all of the ethics, in my opinion, in a much brutaler exam format under the new synoptic. So that's kind of worst case scenario for you. If you've completed all except those, brilliant. You've got until the end of the year to try and then do spreadsheets and professional ethics, gets those ones passed to complete the level. If you are somewhere in between, I would say at this stage you are better off focusing at the other core units. Try and do the bookkeeping units, the indirect tax unit, or the costings unit, and leave spreadsheets and ethics, knowing that whichever way you go, you're going to have to redo those in the synoptic in the new year anyway.
Yeah, that's right. There would be no advantage if you've only got 3 units to go of trying to get 2 of them done, if 2 of them are spreadsheets and ethics, because you've got to get both of them done before at the end of December 17, or you'll just lose them both, or lose one of them. So if you've got 4 units done and you've got spreadsheets and ethics to go, if you're not going to complete them both by December, move over now.
Yeah, agreed completely. And then level 4. So level 4, if you are in the position that you have completed your ISIS project, unless you complete all of the other level 4 units before the new year, that ISIS project doesn't transfer over. There's nothing for it in the new syllabus. You will have to do the synoptic, where you will have to demonstrate competency in internal controls, but within that case study style exam. If you've completed all except ISIS, you can transfer over. You'd still need to sit the synoptic, or you can try and get your ISIS project done this side of Christmas. Now, I know different assessment centres will have issues there with assessing, but Nick and his team are willing to support students through ISIS. But really, you need to get cracking with that as soon as possible. I think Nick said it earlier. Historically, we've advised 6 months to go through that ISIS project from start to finish. And obviously, we are now rapidly reaching the middle of July. That 6 months is ticking away, and we're running out of time. So if you're in the position of having done all of the other level 4 units, or maybe you've got one other level 4 unit that realistically you can do before the end of the year, but you haven't done ISIS, that has got to be something you're considering in the next couple of weeks.
That's right. And as Crystal says there in the chat box, if you've still got ISIS to go, you need to speak to your training providers. Different training providers have different rules. Some may not let you start the project, some may insist you just move over now. At First Intuition, we're not accepting bookings after the end of this month, and on the caveat that they must get their first submission done by the 1st of September. If you do not get your submission by that point to us, we cannot guarantee we will get it assessed in time for you to complete by December 17. So if you don't get your first submission to us by November, we will do our best to get it completed, but you might not, and then you'll have to move over. So it's best to speak to your own training provider to see what their rules are. But as it says, you need to get going on it, really.